But now let's move on to physical development of our motor system, how infants kind of develop and move. So we know, for instance, that motor development in infants tends to be driven a lot by genetics. Newborns tend to have a really hard time moving at first because their proportions, like their head is like literally like a fourth of their total body length. But then you start to grow. And this growing tends to progress in two different ways simultaneously. So the first is from head to toe, top to bottom. So for instance, you kind of start to gain control of your neck and your shoulder muscles. You're able to lift your head, you're able to look around. Then infants are able to kind of use their torso muscles. They're able to sit themselves up. They're able to roll, that type of thing. And they're able to use some of their leg muscles when they start to learn how to crawl and walk. So it kind of progresses from head to toe. But it also tends to simultaneously progress from midline outward. So things like um, they tend to initially start when you put a toy that's like if you have what are those things called? The lullaby things in a baby's crib. They tend to kind of bat at it because it's kind of in their midline. And then they start to kind of reach outward and they're able to kind of grab objects around them. And then they kind of develop fine motor abilities to be able to interact with their environment at different levels. So I kind of like this diagram. This kind of shows you from birth to about 6 years of age, what the different abilities that these infants have when they kind of acquire these different abilities. Um, and so what I want to kind of also point out though, is that these development of motor skills are kind of different across cultures. They might differ depending on what the parents encourage. So for instance, in the US, we tend to swaddle our infants when they're sleeping, for instance, which means that we're wrapping them really tightly in a blanket, like a little newborn burrito, and it restricts their movement. So that actually gets associated with slightly later attainment of some of those motor milestones because they're slower to myelinate those motor nerves for those different skills. They're not using it as quickly and they're not therefore needing to make it more efficient as quickly. We do it for safety and that's totally fine, but it's why American infants typically walk at a later age than children in other parts of the world where walking might be encouraged by the parents a little bit earlier. So this is kind of just showing that there's like cultural differences, but also just how you interact, how the environment plays a role in an infant's development and the course in which those motor neurons and different abilities start to progress, start to myelinate and get better.